CNN's Don Lemon has called for a kind of vaccine apartheid, saying people that ain't had vaccines yet, they should be left behind. They're cluttering up hospital beds. Those hospital beds are for people who've already had vaccines. But who is it really that haven't had vaccines? And what are their reasons? Is this as simple as Don Lemon seems to think it is?
And so I think we have to stop coddling people when it comes to this and the vaccine, saying, oh, you can't shame them. You can't call them stupid. You can't call them silly. Yes, they are.
Shaming is always a good technique to get people to do things. If we've learned one thing from the protests and demonstrations of the last few years, it's the power of shame to get people to do what you want. Earlier this month, Lemon called out unvaccinated people for taking up the space in hospitals from vaccinated people who are playing by the rules. That's an interesting bit of authoritarianism, if you ask me. It's kind of devoid of compassion and is a very reductive type of argument because we haven't yet looked at what kind of people are not vaccinated and what the reasons might be for not being vaccinated. It doesn't seem to me that it's something that should be simplistically assessed in that manner. That's why when I'm always talking about it, I'm always keen to point out that I myself don't have a strong opinion on what your personal, private, medical procedures and solutions ought to be. I'm interested in a global perspective on a significant issue and how government, big business, big pharma, media all interact to create stories that then become truths and lead to edicts such as this, where public figures like Don Lemon sort of fist on table, leave them behind, shun them, vaccine apartheid. That kind of language has its own kind of quality and it should never be applied in any issue. You should never say this group of people about, yeah, but it's a choice, it's a choice. Well, let me tell you, there's other issues around choice that people like that used to, in a sense, play out in different spheres of the political space, you know, like bodily autonomy and choice and segregation and inequality. It's very peculiar the way that certain rules are being discarded in order to facilitate the advancement of this narrative. Let's look a little more deeply into who is getting vaccine shots and who isn't. From the New York Times, people who are eligible for shots but have chosen not to get them is not a single set of Americans, but in many ways two. In one group are those who say they are adamant in their refusal of the coronavirus vaccines. They include a mix of people but tend to be disproportionately white, rural, evangelical Christian and politically conservative. I suppose that comes from the perspective of personal liberty and libertarianism. And I suppose if you're saying Christian and rural, they're not metropolitan. And if they are defining themselves as Christian, their primary authority is a religious rather than government authority, that they take their moral and ethical guidance from a spiritual or at least dogmatic, depending on your view of Christianity, perspective, rather than from, oh, I'm down with what the government wants. In the other group are those who say they are open to getting a shot but have put it off or want to wait to see before making a decision. They are a broad range of people but tend to be a more diverse and urban group, including many younger people, Black and Latino Americans and Democrats. This poll from the Kaiser Family Foundation says unvaccinated adults cite a variety of reasons why they have not gotten a COVID-19 vaccine, with half citing worries about side effects and the newness of the vaccine as a major reason. Other major reasons include just not trusting the government. Like, who trusts the government? Who trusts the government? Who? Some people just think they don't need the vaccine, that's 38%. Not believing the COVID-19 vaccines are safe, that's 37%. And not trusting vaccines in general, that's 26%. So that, in a sense, is a broad range of wherever you stand. I would say they're not ridiculous reasons. Like, that's not like, there's not a percentage of people that are like, they're going to put a robot in your blood. You know, it's not that, is it? It's all sort of like reasonable questions and inquiries, particularly in the climate and context that we're currently in, with most of us feeling to some degree of mistrust towards the institutions that are primarily behind the vaccines, whether or not you believe they're safe and whether or not they are safe. Many concerns about COVID-19 vaccination are expressed at higher rates by people of colour compared to white adults. More than half, 55% of unvaccinated black adults and almost 3/4, 64% of Hispanic adults are concerned about having to miss work due to vaccine side effects compared to 4 in 10 white adults. Larger shares of black and Hispanic adults compared to white adults also express concern about not being able to get the vaccine from a place they trust, having to pay an out-of-pocket cost to get vaccinated and having difficulty travelling to a vaccination site. Another one, very practical. This is what, you know, when it's like an issue like climate change, and like protest around climate change tends to be sort of direct action, which is sort of like, you know, something I'd be totally down with. But there's a disjunct between people talking about climate change and being able to impact ordinary working people, because ordinary working people are concerned with dealing with their actual life. And I think that's no coincidence. If your life is about survival, economic survival, putting off penury, coping with the challenges of life, a situation that I lived in for a while, and it seems like a long while ago now, then you're not thinking as much about, oh no, climate change. You're not about climate change, I'm fucking starving. It doesn't seem so relevant. Many Hispanic adults report being asked for certain types of information or documentation when they signed up for or received vaccine that may pose barriers to getting the vaccine for some. Among all Hispanic adults who made or attempted to make an appointment to receive a vaccine, about a third, 32%, report being asked to provide health insurance information when making an appointment. So this is another strong social and economic reason, and obviously that's connected to migration issues as well, particularly I suppose in America. 4 in 10, 42% say they were asked to provide a government-issued ID, and 14% say they were asked to provide a social security number. So I guess it's a layered and complex issue. So returning to Don Lemon's comments, when you say ban them from beds, you're talking about poor people, you're talking about people that are dealing with economic realities that someone in my position, and I would imagine Don Lemon's position, don't have to concern themselves with. And under no other auspices would you consider, particularly being on the sort of what calls itself the centre left, would you be so disregarding or dismissive of that category of people. But in this context, suddenly it becomes permissible. It's surprising, and it makes me question the true values of people in that political class if they can be so dismissive of people and groups that elsewhere they claim to be supportive of. Because when you put it into those terms, you could say that Don Lemon is saying it's time to shun black, Hispanic, poor, young people. Now, you would never say that, but you are saying that. That is what's being said. That's the danger of reductive, simplistic, propaganda-driven news reporting. Continuing with the statistics, about half of those are in the wait and see group. Ah, we're the old wait and see gang. They say they'd be more likely to get vaccinated if one of the vaccines currently authorised for emergency use were to receive full approval from the FDA. We'll point you towards a video about the FDA and how trustworthy those guys are at the end of this one. 21% of people say they'd get it if their employer gave them paid time off to get vaccinated and recover from any side effects. 30% said if they were provided with free childcare while they go to get vaccinated and recover from any side effects. What it points to is a series of vectors of economic and social factors that are not being considered and oughtn't be dismissed. The reductiveness of Don Lemon's argument and other people advancing sort of apartheid type rhetoric around the vaccine is not including the complexity of the issue. This shows you that there is no room for bombast in this argument. There's no room for hyperbole, condemnation. Those idiots, we should leave them behind. I'm not doing this. You know, like wherever you stand on the vaccine issue, you're a human being like me. One day you're going to die, I'm going to die, we're all going to die. Let's be kind to one another and rational and understanding, because otherwise what you're doing is you're venting anger from elsewhere in your character. It's just like, I don't like life, I don't like people being able to do that. Like, become aware of that. Otherwise, the vaccine issue will be resolved. Either a vaccine will come around that people feel really, really confident in, a government will come around that people really, really trust, and that stuff won't go because it's not resolved. It's unresolved anger, unresolved hysteria. For me, these statistics make plain that it is impossible to make Don Lemon style condemnations of people, because imagine if you had childcare considerations, health concerns, were worried about the impact of a vaccine and your inability to deal with the side effects and cope with children. How can you be dismissive and so lacking in compassion when there is such evident complexity around many people's lives when it comes to an issue as significant as this one? You can't afford to just wipe people away and shun people when you don't understand the circumstances of their lives. This shows me the futility of bipolar, combative social discourse. Instead, we should be inclusive, compassionate, considerate. Which political party claims to be representative of those values again?
Oh, you can't shame them. You can't call them stupid. You can't call them silly. Yes, they are.
Yep, there are those single mums that can't get childcare that are concerned about the side effects. Give them a good shaming.
The people who aided and abetted Trump are stupid because they believed his big lie. The people who are not getting vaccines, who are believing the lies on the internet instead of science, it's time to start shaming them. What else? Or leave them behind.
Shame and leave them behind. Those are the solutions. I would say there's a certain line that you can't cross, particularly if your whole political party is resourced by sort of inclusivity, diversity, compassion. You can't say, well, with this issue, this is the one issue. You know, but, and may I say that if you look at the science, it seems that there is room for conversation in many of the areas that these statistics suggest are cause for concern. It's like, you know, do you trust your government? Do you have concerns about side effects? So these are not things that you can just go, no, like with the swipe of a broadsword across a population of people that includes, it seems, a great many vulnerable people that have been disadvantaged elsewhere that are worthy of compassion and certainly worthy of being heard.
Because they are keeping the majority of Americans behind. You didn't feel that way about the polio vaccine. You don't feel that way about measles, mumps, rubella when it comes to your children, and all of a sudden this vaccine is different. What's different about it? The only different thing about it is because of your politics today.
I think you could level the same argument in the other direction. What is difficult about it? Why would you mobilize politically around this subject? If I'm appealing to anything in you, if there is an area where I'm happy to express directly what I mean, it's do not be so quick to condemn other people when you don't understand what their position is. That's like a basic spiritual and Christian value. Be open to other people's perspective. Don't assume that you know exactly what it's like to be them, and approach people with an open heart and recognize that, you know, like you can't, with a value such as compassion, kindness, you can't pick and choose where it's applied. You have to apply it everywhere. All of the good books suggest that that is the approach. And the more something irks, angers, irritates you, the more you have to look in your side yourself. I believe that our values should be about how we conduct ourselves, not what we tell others to do. What is Don Lemon doing there? Is he saying, well, I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be doing that, this is what I believe? Or is he saying, they? The more you have they on your lips, the closer you are to creating serious problems.
People talking about, well, I don't know what's in the shot, Chris. I don't know what's in that shot.
I'll tell you what's not in it.
Hold on,
a tracking device.
Yeah. Let me finish this. You know what they get shots in nowadays? In their rear ends. They're getting shots to make it bigger. They're getting shots in their face. They don't know what's in Botox.
Certainly there are some hypocrisies. People are willing to embrace some treatments, eat certain types of food. Like, we do go through life blindly consuming products, but you can't say that there isn't good reason for suspicion while being on CNN, one of the dominant broadcasters that creates all of this antipathy, division, contradiction, deception, conflagration. All these things are brought about because of like mad stuff that comes out in the media. Stuff, you know, we've got other videos that point out direct lies that these broadcasters tell people continually. How can you expect their trust when you haven't earned it?
Nothing wrong with Botox.
People don't know what they eat, what they drink,
I tried it
what they
once.
smoke.
My eyebrow went up. I don't have it now. As you can see, I got all these wrinkles. Everybody asks me when I'm going to get, you need Botox. But listen, nothing wrong with Botox.
Is there anything wrong with Botox? Am I supposed to have Botox? Am I not? What is this about now?
But I'm saying, do people really know what's in stuff that they inject in their bodies all the time? And they're like,
what they eat, what they drink,
all the... Stop it.
So Don Lemon's also suggesting that obese people should be shunned. It's their choice to eat these food, and people taking beauty treatments. Yeah, I wonder if there's any propagandist machine telling you should look a certain way and you're not good enough if you don't look a certain way. I wonder if there's a propagandist machine selling certain types of food that aren't good for you, pushing those certain types of food. I wonder if they're advertising on the very channel that Don Lemon's speaking on in that moment. People aren't just inventing the idea of Botox and bad food. It's supporting an entire system.
And we have to stop saying, oh, well, you know, you have to listen to people and... no, you don't.
What we'll say is Don Lemon's got a nice face. And he seems like maybe he's a beautiful person, I guess, I don't know. But I don't agree with what he's saying pretty strongly when it comes to shaming, leaving behind, not considering complex arguments, being dismissive, not acknowledging the role of media in creating the current suspicion and heightened awareness and doubt that exists around this issue. And I don't mean like right-wing or left-wing media. I mean the entire integration between government, big business and big pharma. How could that not generate mistrust when you see people in the revolving doors, oh now they work there, oh this legislation is being passed, oh the FDA is funded by the very things that are supposed to be regulating. How are you meant to trust?
I had an issue, I told you, Chris, when my family was here and they were saying, well, I don't know, I said, you know how you got here to visit me in New York? You took an airplane. What is that? Science.
See that? That's science. Science is everything. That's so mental. That's so mental. Of course it is. Of course science has good and bad outcomes, but science is a subset of capitalism. If people could make money from those airplanes, they wouldn't be flying. And when I say capitalism, what I mean by that is the current system of exploitation, propped up crony capitalism. In case you're concerned, let me know in the comments below if you want me to learn a new lexicon. You can't just say science only brings about good things, like it's a lovely, lovely old granddad science issuing stuff. There's been all sorts of complications. The opioid crisis, do you know what that was? Science. But that's too dismissive and simplistic. Science underwritten by profit motives.
You know why people live to be older than 40, 50, 60 years old these days? Science.
That's science as a religion. Science is just a bunch of research and investigation that can have amazing outcomes. One of the many areas of human endeavour that is beautiful and brilliant. But if you corral it beneath a corrupted system, then the outcomes will necessarily be corrupted. You can't use such reductive, simplistic arguments, particularly not when doing something as important as dismissing a whole class of people, a significant number of people, and saying that those people are unworthy of compassion. Once contempt enters into an argument, incredible things become possible. Elsewhere on the internet, you'll find people saying we're on the brink of civil war, or that there could be new sort of forms of fascism on the rise. Well, they may not come from where you think they're going to come from, particularly not when you hear discourse of this kind under the guise of liberalism.
You know what is so contradictory about it? When people get sick, they go into the hospital and they say, throw it all, give it to me, inject it, put it in me. And you're going to pay a whole lot of money. And you're going to tax the medical system when you could have gotten it for free and you wouldn't be in that position in the first place.
You're going to question the vaccine, but you want to take a horse dewormer.
Making the choice to call ivermectin a horse dewormer is a propagandist choice. That's a linguistic choice. I've got no opinion on what you should do with your health, but that's an interesting choice and a further decision that makes you believe perhaps they have an agenda, that they're pushing an agenda, that they're not objectively conveying news. Mainstream media is in serious trouble because it's become entertainment and it's become propaganda. This is obviously bigger than Don Lemon, who I'm sure as a human being is a lovely guy. But with regard to this particular issue, he's advancing arguments that lead to division, that are reductive, that are condemning people that if you had to look in their eyes, you wouldn't be as comfortable condemning. If you had to experience the challenges they're facing with childcare, if you had to go through the reasons they might be doubtful about the government, I don't think it would be so easy to condemn them. This is a call for compassion, open-mindedness, and understanding of nuance, and not to be reductive around such complex issues. But the mainstream media has to do that. Thankfully, we don't have to do that. We can be open-minded, we can look at as many sides as possible, and we'll still make mistakes, but we'll make mistakes without any obvious intention or agenda, because there isn't an agenda or an intention other than to try to understand the complexity of our world and the various competing stories that are vying for control of your consciousness. And if you want to be involved in that conscious conversation, hit me up in the comments below. What do you think? Where do you think I could have conveyed this argument better? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? We want to hear your voice. You're the people that matter. Give it a like, give it a thumbs up, give us a little subscribe, share it around amongst your friends, vaccinated, unvaccinated, come one, come all, you're all welcome here. Sign up to my mailing list at russellbrand.com. Watch this about the FDA and sort of see how them dudes carry on. Have a look at this video if you want to do some meditation. Have a listen to my podcast Under the Skin. You can subscribe to it anywhere in the world, particularly if you've got Apple. Thanks very much for watching this. Let's try and stay free. Don't go crazy.